Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Super-Fanta-Fi. This being a show where I talk about TV shows of the supernatural, fantasy, and or science fictional genre. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episodes of the Shannara Chronicles. So, like I was just saying, obviously this week was back-to-back episodes of the Shannara Chronicles. Rather than breaking it down episode by episode, what I'm going to do is just talk about everything in general, just run some things down, my thought about some new information, stuff we just got across both episodes, so it's not in any particular order. So, first of all, the whole situation at Paranor was kind of like a shock to me about the little act that Meredith and Al-Anon put up. I thought, like, okay, first of all, I was like, okay, like, obviously Al-Anon still got his, like, I guess I was like, in the beginning, I was like, well, he understands, like, going in there and she's untrained, maybe it's going to mess with her powers, maybe it just kind of seduce her or something, like, it's like, oh, it'll mess with her head, and maybe it'll amplify her power, like, something, like, there would be a negative side of her going in there because she's not well trained. And then lo and behold, what do we find out? That in actuality, the whole thing was a setup. That their whole little fight and everything was because they couldn't let Will know the truth because Will's mind can't be blocked. But Al-Anon's can, so Bandon could read Will's mind, but not Al-Anon. So it ends in a result of like, okay, since I can't do that, I can't trust Al-Anon. So what I'm going to do instead is he poisons Flick with the Warlock's blade. It kind of acts like a contagion or rather virus and is slowly killing him. So Will has to get, like, he needs to skull or he's not going to cure him. Like I said, the whole thing was a trap, which Meredith didn't know that that's what was going to happen. You know, she was just like, okay, Al-Anon was like, okay, we can't let Bandon get the skull, you know, because it's the whole point of resurrecting the Warlock Lord. But like him and Al-Anon and Bandon both get locked behind that barrier and everything. And the whole situation kind of makes you feel a little sour in multiple regards. Like, you get where Will is coming from, too, because it's like, because the problem is Al-Anon lied to him. Because of the fact of the matter is, it's like, you couldn't, like, I get it, you didn't want Will to know the truth and everything. But, like, even Will kind of points out, the fact is, Al-Anon went into this knowing there was a good chance this was going to happen. And that's something that kind of gets debated about this whole situation, is the fact is, that Al-Anon once again is willing to sacrifice people for the greater good. And it's like, in grand scheme of things, it's like, well, yes, this is war. There is evil coming to stop evil from taking over, as like you need to make sacrifices. But the fact of the matter is, with circumstances like this, you should try to find another way, a way that you can stop Bandon and save Flick. But Al-Anon wasn't concerned about that. His ultimate concern was about stopping Bandon, and it's like, whoever comes along the way, whoever has to fall along that way, then so be it. I mean, it's even something Flick brought up. It's like, ever since you came into our lives, my family has fallen apart. You know, what happened to Shay, now the destiny has been brought to Flick. I mean, that's being brought about to Will, this being his destiny and everything. And then what's happening to Flick right now, his entire family fell apart because of Al-Anon's intervention and stuff like that, which Al-Anon's like, it's destiny or whatever, you know? But he doesn't make things any easier, because it's like, yeah, I get it. Destiny's a thing and everything, but you don't have to be. And maybe it's just because for the long time Al-Anon's been around that he had to learn the hard way himself that you can't fight destiny. That the fact of the matter is, when it comes to doing the right thing, protecting everyone, you have to make those hard choices. So, like he did with Amber Lee, and now this, it's just, and that situation is just making things worse with Will, because Will just has hatred towards Al-Anon because of his decisions of him constantly doing that. So. But basically, Meredith wants to help him because, like, you know, she just wants to help Will, which, well, let's get into the fact that they do a little time traveling in this episode. I thought that was kind of interesting, because the skull is buried in Shadyville, his village, but obviously circumstances made it so you wouldn't be able to get it present day. You'd have to go back in time to get it. So, where he ends up crossing paths with his dad, surprisingly enough, as well as his mom. I had a feeling the moment they got to there, and that lady he kept looking at, and he just couldn't, like, he couldn't keep his eyes away. I was like, that's your mom, isn't it? I just had a feeling, and it turns out to be the case. You know, his mom, Hetty. So, and I think for Will, this was a nice way, because he never knew his dad past this whole situation, because by the time he came into the world and everything, like, his dad had already been worsened by magic, as well as his experience about going up against the Warlock Lord and everything. So his dad wasn't the same person that his mother Hetty fell in love with. So for him, it's like, oh, we can change everything, but it's like, no, you can't, because you don't know what you changing things now could mean. That maybe you are born, along with the fact of the matter is your dad doesn't take up his right as his destiny as a Shannara and end up defeating the Warlock Lord. So a lot of people would die. You and I might not be here, so it is interesting, though. He does end up telling his dad. Kind of wasn't expecting that. I was wondering if that was going to have any kind of weird spatial time thing. I was also halfway expecting him to leave the elf stones with his dad, because I was like, is that how you get the elf stones in the first place? I don't think we ever found out how that happened, because his dad doesn't have the elf stones at that point, not unless it's something that Al-Anon gives him. So I was thinking like, oh, is it going to be like some weird time thing where his Will gave him to his dad, so his dad would eventually give it to him? And I guess ultimately this is even more reason why he didn't want Will, like, because I wonder like how much of this is like almost canonical in a sense of in the frame of the world of the Shannara Chronicles, like him going back in time. Did his dad actually remember that? So when Will was born, he's like, I want this child name. What are we gonna name our son? Will. I don't know, it just came to me. And then anytime he saw Will growing up, not only was it just his thought of like, oh, this is my destiny, but now he also realizes like, oh wait, that's who my son grows up to be. And it's like, now I know that he's older, having to deal with this destiny, and that no matter what I do now, it's still going to catch up to him. But like in some shape or form, still hoping that maybe he could change the future. I wonder, like, did something like that influence any of his thoughts and stuff like that? Like, are we going into this thinking like, no, like he did what he did because he did know about the future and stuff like that? Because Will kind of let him off easy and was like, no, like, you were the best dad, which he, like, because ultimately his dad wasn't always the best dad, but that's because Will at the time didn't know why his dad was doing what he did. But now he recognizes his dad is doing the best he could, considering the fact of the matter is, like, all that was on his shoulders and all he ever wanted to do was protect Will and his mom, so. And it also gave Will another chance to see his mom again, too, like, kind of see their story come together and just see the love between them, but also just, like I say, it was an opportunity to see both his parents, I mean, even at one point, Hetty comments on Will, and he's like, well, I'm only like this because my mom was so amazing. And it's just, it's bittersweet because, it's like, yeah, they're together here, but then ultimately it's bittersweet because we know what their future holds for both of them, so. That whole situation did bring up something interesting, though, because you had Shay talking to Meredith. It's like, oh, yeah, you're going to tell Will, so how long you and Will been together? What? No, we're just friends. It's like, the way you look at him, I'm like, what? And there are multiple times throughout the episode where she's kind of looking at him like that, but something else comes up and nothing goes forward. But I'm like, really? It's like this love situation is getting even more complicated. It's like, I mean, there's the whole Amber Lee situation, but maybe it's just kind of like, well, because in my brain, I'm thinking Amber Lee will return in some shape or form, but maybe it's just like she's going forever. There is no like going back. Like now that she's at Elk Creek, she will forever be that way. But I'm halfway expecting her to return in some shape or form. Then there's the whole Eritrea situation, but then it's like, well, there's her and Illyria, but then it's like still like there's something between her and Will, and now Meredith. It's just like, oh, so much. And especially, it's going to get complicated, especially if Meredith has to go down the path of the Druid, which is, it seems like they might be angling her down that path. Then, as we saw with Priya and Al-Anon, that does not work out. So that's just going to be problems on its own. I didn't even think about that till just now, but that was just so interesting to me that that's a possibility there. It's just, I don't know, there's just those gazing moments. Those moments where they gaze at each other and just like, you almost halfway expect them to kiss or something. It's just, but it wasn't even all just that in this episode. Well, the episodes. Well, I'll go ahead and talk about everything in general. I was kind of sad for the situation to have ended the way it did with Flick. Flick killing himself because he didn't want Will to have to deal with that situation of like putting the world in danger just for his sake. So he killed himself just to make sure that Will wouldn't have that choice. Him abandon fight. The Shannara blade breaks, which I'm not too surprised about. I was halfway expecting it to break on the first swing because the blade is supposed to be unbreakable, but it's only as strong as the bearer's will. And I'm sure Will's got at that moment he was just consumed by rage, and it just, he has a very conflicted heart. I'm sure, he's just he's not as focused as he could be. And as determined, like his conviction, I don't think is as strong as it could have been. Like I said, more so than anything, it was a situation where I think he was fueled by anger more so than anything. So there's that. But I get the feeling like the Shannara, it's not that easy to just get rid of that. Once he goes down like the path he needs to, it will probably fix itself. So, I mean, we'll just have to wait and see. But But some interesting things came up during a conversation between Bandon and Al-Anon, in a sense of Al-Anon, like I brought up earlier, looked at Flick as like, yeah, there's some people born in this world for sacrifices, which I'm like, that is such a shitty thing to say. He's like, he's there dying, and you got the audacity to say something like, I was like, why are you so callous? I get it, like, you have to face your destiny. Like I said, something must have happened along the road where he was once like that, believing like, no, you can do everything, you can save everyone, but realizing that's not possible. You save who you can save, that basically sacrifices have to be made for the greater good. And in this case, I guess Flick kind of understood that too, because he did that, he sacrificed himself. But maybe Al-Anon wasn't even just talking about Flick's purpose, maybe he was talking about himself as well, because it's something Bandit ends up pointing out. He's like, you're dying. So the whole him losing his markings isn't just because he met Marith. Once again, it's something that, Marith kind of like, Will kind of talked to Marith about earlier in the episode, in the first episode, of being like, you being here is no coincidence. Like, the fact of the matter is, like, to activate the portal, they needed Shannara and a druid. So, which that whole situation proved not only is she a druid, but also proved that she is, in fact, Al-Anon's daughter, which even more further proves the fact of the matter is, sadly, she is going to go down the same path that he is. And once again, the whole destiny thing, it's actually, I feel like this season's even more so than, the first season, I think the entirety of the show is, can you fight Destiny or not? Like, Destiny will catch up to you no matter what. And it seems like with Al-Anon, it kind of is, because it's like, well, he's going to die soon, because the whole situation is happening because he's dying. Because he may look young, but the fact of the matter is, his life is catching up to him. Or maybe it's specifically because that barrier was making them weaker and magic was the only means of keeping him alive and around. I still think it is true because, like I said, the markings on his neck disappearing like 2 or 3 episodes ago. So, but once again, it's something we'll have to wait and see, because he's saying that it's not too late for Bandon because Bandon hasn't crossed that path. He hasn't committed the ultimate evil of resurrecting the Warlock Lord, but once he does that, there'll be no going back. Because it's actually interesting, because Bandon was like, yeah, because of you, I won't lie, like, you were the closest thing that I had to a father. How messed up is that, Because everything Bandon's doing is, like, he's saying, like, my biggest problem, like, everything he's doing is because he's mad at Al-Anon because of what happened to him, and it's just like, he's willing to go so far just because he's so angry at Al-Anon. And not just him, just mad at the world in general. Mad at his parents, mad at Al-Anon, because it's like, he felt like, oh, maybe I have a greater purpose. I can do some good. But, like, just the way his parents treat him, his parents treated him as a monster, which we never got back to. The fact is, I can only assume Bandon killed the parents too, just to spite them. Or maybe he let them live after he killed their son. He looked at Al-Anon as like, oh, another person in my life that, used me. And he even made the comparison to Marith. That's like, oh, you brought her in here so inexperienced and untrained. She's your daughter, and you're just using her as a weapon. He's like, she's nothing like you, which is like, well, who's to say she won't end up like him, won't end up like Bandon, so. I am curious to know what this means for Al-Anon now, because there is no doubt that she is his daughter. So what does that mean going forward? Granted, we have him being struck with the Warlock Blade, so he's dying now too. So, but for him, I'm sure, like, if he dies, he dies, because as long as it, like, because I think maybe he's starting to realize it himself that what Marith's path is going forward, so. Not just them, not that whole situation. We also learned more about Jax, for one. We ended up learning, like, all the money he was gathering up, it wasn't just for selfish reasons or for himself. And one particular person he met up with, Shima. She was the wife of one of the soldiers that was under his command, and that was a soldier named Connor. But the Crimson caught up to him and killed the little boy there, Desmond. And obviously Jax, in retribution, kicked their asses, even kept the one leading dude alive, but Shima told him to leave and never come back. That basically he's cursed because everyone around him dies, like his whole unit, because that was the thing, like the only one in his unit that lived was him. So obviously she just lost Desmond, the little boy in front of her. Like, I don't know, whether that was, I would assume that was their son. And it's just like, first she calls me Connor, now this, and she's like, because at first she was thankful, but now it's like, now I've lost another person. I'm all alone now because of you. So I guess that was kind of giving Jax more motivation in this fight because of the Crimson. Now, like, so much is going wrong because of the Crimson now. So But I think it's also just, he needs someone to lash out at against because of this whole situation. So he was originally going to let that dude live. Obviously, they were going to torture him, but he escaped. And when Tellman sent him after Riga, which I kind of dive into that in a little bit, the dude he let live earlier is like, oh, I'm about to kill you now, which even tied up, Jax is not to be messed with. Broke the dude's arm, and I mean, when he broke it good. And it's like, you're kind of a douchebag. You kind of deserve it for what you did, because he killed Desmond for no reason. It's like, it's just because it's like, oh, you're standing in our way. We're going to, and it's just like, it's so messed up that they think and they act like they're in the right in this situation, and all the different people you kill. That boy did nothing wrong. He was an innocent victim in this situation just to motivate Jax to give you information. You killed the kid. It's like, how can you consider yourself just in all that you do? That Riga doesn't realize just how perverse his goal is and how distorted his mind is with everything that's going on. Once again, not even focusing on the fact that this is all about the Warlock Lord coming back. Why? Because for whatever reason in his head, he thinks that, no, I'll be there to stand up against the Warlock Lord. Magic doesn't work on him, so he thinks, oh, I got it. But it's like, dude, you don't have anything. You weren't there all those years ago when the Warlock Lord attacked. You really don't have any idea of what he's capable of, especially when we learn more about what he's after, but I'll get into that soon enough. Well, I mean, I guess now is actually the perfect time to kind of get into it. It seems that he's after something known as the Heaven's Well. This is what Tamlin promised him. Basically, it's connected, to the Silver River? It's basically where all magic in this world comes from. And the moment he absorbs it all, he will be unstoppable. Because it seems because we end up finding out that Coglin is actually a druid himself, which is kind of interesting. I very much like to see him and Alanon cross paths, because it's like, that's the only druid we know of. I mean, to be fair, in Coglin's case, he's like, I'm an ex-druid, so maybe he went underground, so maybe even Alanon doesn't even know that he's around or that he's awake, or maybe they just don't know each other existed. But it's like, I'm wondering how that whole thing is. Not unless Coglin's like pretending to be a good guy when in actuality he has ulterior motives, because he just ups and randomly disappears at nearing the end of the episode, so I'm like, okay, something suspicious about that. You're just leaving Eritrea to her own devices, even though you're kind of training her, which I'll get to soon enough. But it's just kind of interesting to me. But going back to it, because he ended up seeming like he was representing the humans in this, well, at least the kingdom of Lay, in this whole situation with the Dark Lord all those years ago, while Alanon was with Arbalon, So, because it seems like the Dark Lord killed her husband so that she could take control. Because that way because even Coglin brought it up, it's like Lee is the only place that was untouched during the Dark Warlord's attack, because that was her way of making sure that her people stayed safe. So it's like she got being queen, which is kind of like a little cutthroat to kind of get to the top. But in her mind, it's like, whatever, for the sake of my people. My husband probably wasn't leading the people the right way. So, which I'm curious, does Lyria know? I highly doubt it. Actually, because it kind of confuses me on the whole time frame. I don't remember how long the whole fight against the Dark Lord went on. Because obviously, when they went back in time, when Will and Merrick went back in time, that was before the Dark Lord had awoken. But because Alanon shows up there just when they're about to leave. So it's like, I don't know how long that struggle went on, because by the time Will was born, I think it was already done. So Will's maybe 18, 20-ish. So that happened 18 years ago. But I was thinking because the last time demons were free was 30-ish years ago, but maybe all that took place during that time. I'm not sure. It was also kind of interesting because prior to this, Will never had any visions, which he got visions in this episode, which I'll kind of dive into soon enough. But, because you saw Shay having them in this episode, but I guess it's just because it's when you're truly, awakening as a Shannara, that's when the visions kick in. Because I don't remember Will ever having any prior till now, but maybe it's just because he's becoming more and more in tune with his Shannara powers or bloodline, that's why that's happening now. Or maybe it's a situation of it kind of falls to him to get the visions, because it wasn't just him that got visions. You also had Eritrea getting visions as well, which I'll kind of dive into that right now, because we end up finding out that Eritrea is from a group. The whole tattoo on her back, the whole being able to open the blood fire, is because she is an Armageddon child, basically half human, half demon. Didn't see that coming. Thought you were just gonna be a special like bloodline of humans, but it's like, no, you're something else entirely. That's interesting. And it seems like demons were hunting her and her mom all those years ago. Why specifically? Is it because they are an abomination? I mean, more so than anything, they're the only group that's like, how did that whole Armageddon children begin? Because it doesn't seem like her mom might have been one. It's just like, I guess, children born under certain circumstances. I would assume a human and a demon, which I guess that kind of puts her and Will kind of in a similar situation. He's kind of was an outcast, being half human, half elf. So I guess him and Eritrea have a lot more in common than they thought. But basically, because of this evil within them, they have the potential to be great evil. That's always kind of, so it seems like the whole aspect of Eritrea kind of being a little, I mean, it's kind of her rover upbringing that kind of led her down that dark path, but it seems like there might have been other contributing factors as well. But the good inside of her that Will saw, that Amber Lee saw, well, that is a potential destiny for her. But it also seems like if she's not careful, that darkness can be controlled, in particular by the Shadow Lord, the Warlock Lord. I don't want to call him the Shadow Lord. The Warlock Lord can control her if he comes back. So that's kind of the danger of that. Which we saw that she can use it of her own will, because there was a Moraith that she ended up controlling for herself. And even later on in the episode, she ended up killing it. But we saw her eyes turn black when she did it, and she saw visions. And the vision showed her with snake eyes, like the red Moraith. So showing that, and Will kind of saw a similar thing in his vision. So maybe we'll have we'll have Eritrea going down a path similar to Bandon. Maybe that's what her destiny has in store for her. We don't know. Hopefully not, but we would just kind of have to wait and see. I'm very interested about that. I'm glad we got to know more about her as an Armageddon child, but I'd like to learn more about what that entails exactly. How did that whole situation come about? Half human, half demon. Were they like born naturally? Was it like a spell? Was it magic? Or was it just purely a human and a demon mating? Like, is her dad a demon? Because her dad's never come up in the conversation. It's like, how did my mom really die? It's like, well, the last time we saw her is when she passed Eritrea off to Coghlan. So that's the last time we saw her. At first, I was wondering if that Moraith that was inside the cage was someone specifically connected to Eritrea. I was like, oh, is that supposed to be like, could it be like her dad? Could it be her mom or something? Just because the fact is that Coghlan caught it just made me I just thought that was kind of interesting. Basically saying like she's able to control that Moraith, but a red one would be a lot more harder to control considering it's more evil and stuff like that. So I'm very interested to see where this all goes, because you have all worlds colliding at this point in time. Because now Bandon has a skull. He's closer to bringing back the Warlock Lord, which means Eritrea is in deep trouble. Obviously, you have Al-Anon situation, and then things got super bad at the Inlay because of Riga, which is like he had that moment where Lyria and Andrew were going to work together, and it's like, okay, we're going to be teaming together, no lying between us, and it's just like, basically being like, well, my mom wants Arbalon under her own control. Like, let's play along and pretend like she's winning when in actuality she isn't. I even like that sweet moment of Amber being like, Ender being like, oh, should I call you, or should I call you mom? And she's like, you can just call me your highness. I thought that was like, oh, sucking up a little bit. Interestingly enough, we kind of found out in this episode too what her and Rika's whole situation was about. Basically, she's in the arms business, and selling weapons is a lot harder with magic users around, so it just kind of benefited her, because it's like, oh yeah, here's some weapons for your calls, and there's also all these magic users around. It's just, I don't know, like it was a partnership of convenience is all it was. So, but sadly at the end we have him potentially Riga potentially killing Anderson. He doesn't deserve the crown. It's like, I'm guessing you think you do. Which now this puts the royal family at nil. There is no one left in the royal family, which sucks. Like, I don't know, like not unless something happens next episode and we find out Andrew's not dead. I don't know, but right now, like, no one's left now, which is like, because he was the last standing member of the royal family. Because him and Lyria didn't get married, so that whole relationship wasn't official. Because actually, Riga was aiming for her. I mean, he wanted to kill both of them, but, Andrew protected her. Which you had that moment of Tellman kind of being like, no, which, okay, good to see that you actually do care about your daughter. Because there was a part of me just like, is she just a pawn piece to you? But it's like, no, and you do love her. You might not show it all the time. You do, maybe it's kind of a situation like Al-Anon, because you think it's for the greater good of everyone else. You put your feelings aside. In this particular case, it's like for the greater good of your people to protect them. You're willing to sacrifice your husband, force your daughter into a marriage for being a bargaining chip in kind of a political manipulation type of situation, but ultimately you do care about her. So, I mean, there's a silver lining to that whole shitty situation, and very shitty it is. So, overall, great episodes. I'm very interested to see what goes down in the next episode. Like I said, shit is officially hitting the fan. And I'm so interested to see where things go, especially this whole Eritrea situation, which is like, maybe it's a situation of like, it's a possible future, maybe we'll see her stepping down that way, but maybe Will or maybe Lyria can help bring her back. We will ultimately just have to wait and see. Also note that next week will be 2 episodes as well, which is kind of interesting. Like, they're doing that. Like, okay, sure, if that's what you want to do. So do keep that in mind. Next week's episodes will be back-to-backs as well. So, but really, that's all I want to talk about in this episode. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.